This year will mark 10 years since the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement emerged across tertiary institutions in South Africa. Protests began at Wits University as a means of students' resistance to high registration and tuition fees and financial exclusion due to historic debt. Following days of protest by students and some deterrent opportunistic vigilantism, universities deployed security on campuses. Tensions heightened and excessive force was used, leading to student arrests and even injuries. Now, over the years, the plight for free or affordable fees has continued, with protest action emerging occasionally in institutions. The cost of the resistance for many amounted in convictions, inability to conclude studies, and even the tragic death of Mthokozisi Ntumba, a bystander who was allegedly shot and killed by police in 2021 in Braamfontein amid the protests. Now, let's speak now to youth and social justice activist who was part of the hashtag Fees Must Fall protests in 2015. Busisiwe Seabe, welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an interesting 10 years. When you talk about it like that, it sounds a little bit more romantic than how I would like to remember it.
Right.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us about how you remember it and the impact particularly on yourself as a student, as a person, and your relationship also perhaps with family.
I can definitely say that the Fees Must Fall movement was a momentous occasion in South Africa's history. Outside of just higher education on its own, it was a stepping stone from the 1976 youth uprising that we have all come to know and learn about in high school and also in institutions of higher learning. The difference between, the 76 movement and Fees Must Fall becomes, the state's response to a large extent in a democratic South Africa. And I think what we didn't anticipate was the kind of resistance and the kind of repression that we had experienced within the Fees Must Fall movement at the time, which to a large extent mirrored 76, and we had assumed that moving into a democratic dispensation would mean that the state would engage with peaceful protest in a different way. The call for free, quality, decolonized education is still a call that we are very pertinent about attaining. There are some victories within the Fees Must Fall movement, particularly on the workers' side, and also regarding, the fees freeze, in the sense that, fees haven't increased to a large extent over a number of years, but the fundamental call for free, quality, decolonized education still stands. And, reflecting on Fees Must Fall movement 10 years down gives the sense that we have not finished the work that we had started in 2015.
Let's talk about that work and let's talk about the results. Would you say that some progress has been made, and is it enough?
I definitely say that some progress was made. In terms of, like I mentioned, we were able to freeze the fee increment for, a number of years, 2015, 2016, and 2017, but unfortunately, it started up again around 2018. We were also able to get more funding for institutions of higher learning in terms of NSFAS and other supportive bursaries to be able to fund students through university. We were able to get workers to a large extent, in-sourced in various institutions of higher learning, and those are victories that we must be able to acknowledge. However, the fundamental call for free, quality, decolonized education still remains a pertinent part of the Fees Must Fall movement that we were not able to attain. And unfortunately, the class of 2025 will get a sense of why the free, quality, decolonized education was such a pertinent issue for us in institutions of higher learning, particularly the decolonized element of it, because it helps to bridge the gap between, high school and university and also the working world. What we have to always and consistently remember is that universities are microcosms of society. So most of the ills that you find in society will be replicated in institutions of higher learning, especially institutions that are cosmopolitan, for an example, like Wits University. A lot of what we're finding, like gender-based violence issues, racial segregation and marginalization, are issues that we will find in institutions of higher learning, and the decolonial element of the Fees Must Fall movement attempted to redress all of those things in order to ensure that students don't face the same challenges that we faced when we were in university.
And let's talk about that some more. How has the student activism landscape evolved over the past 10 years? And how active is the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement today?
I definitely say that the student movement has evolved to a large extent. We are seeing more creative ways of, activizing, if I were to say it in that way. We've come up with new terminologies called four lists, and we have the articulation in terms of the language to be able to express how we feel and to be able to express our disgruntlement. What we are lacking to a large extent is the means to physically express that on the ground. And I think, as you know, in the past 10 years, we've seen the Fees Must Fall movement dwindle in terms of numbers. And what that means is that people have moved to a more passive means of protesting. So instead of being physically on the streets and shutting down, people are now writing articles, people are now writing dissertations, people are attending conferences. So people are taking the fight to a more technological, social media aspect, as opposed to the physical grunt work that is necessary, which is groundwork and actual physical protest. So we are seeing that, young activists are finding different and alternative ways of expressing their disgruntlement and also fighting for some of the issues that we fought for during Fees Must Fall. It's just the generation of now and my generation is a bit different in how we see things playing out and how we believe things should be done. But the call for free, quality, decolonized education will continue.
Okay, so let's talk about the generation of today. Now, in just 2 days, Matric 2024 class will be getting their results. Now, what challenges do you think lie ahead for this generation?
I'm very excited for them. That's first and foremost. It is going to be a whirlwind of an experience for them, especially for the first 2 months of the year, particularly now in January and February, as they try and settle down and figure out what to do. One of the challenges that they're definitely going to find themselves faced with is financial exclusion. And financial exclusion in the sense that not everyone is going to be able to get a bursary or be funded by NSFAS to enter an institution of higher learning. Another thing that they're definitely going to face is language. Language is going to be a very big issue for them in institutions of higher learning, because the kind of language that you learn in high school is very different from the language that you experience in institutions of higher learning. As someone who came from a Model C high school going into university with English as my first language, it was a little difficult for me to settle into the kind of academic language that is used within institutions of higher learning vis-a-vis in university. And that gap, has facilitated a lot of dropouts as well for some students because of that language barrier. So they should be able to understand that there's going to be language issues from that perspective. And, especially for people who are coming from township schools in rural areas who didn't have English as their medium of instruction, they're going to have a serious challenge and they're going to struggle a lot with the academic language there.
And then now, in closing, very, very briefly, what advice do you have for them?
I definitely say that they should enjoy this particular experience. I would encourage them to get in contact with, the political engagements within their university. They're going to need to be in line with their SRC and political parties on campus. They will help them in the next phase of their academic journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to leave it right there, Busisiwe.
Thank you.
All right. Youth and social justice activist who was part of the #Fees Must Fall protests in 2015, Busisiwe Seabe.